Hi there, and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and this is a little weekly Q&A podcast where I try to my best to answer some of your questions. So we have some good ones this week. I'm excited to try to answer them. And I am wearing an oldie buttoned goodie. This is the throw over. This is the pullover version of the very first Rhinebeck sweater that I designed, the throwback, which is a cardigan. And I just knew I wanted it as a pullover, and I just love it. It's a classic, cozy, knit out of magpie fibers and spin cycle yarns. I guess that's all I got to say about that. So let's answer some questions. All right. Hello. I'm hoping you can help my brain to stop hurting whenever I am trying to think about adding short rows to the upper back portion of my sweaters, or anywhere I might want to add them on other projects. I've not seen where every designer does them consistently, which begs the question, and my headache, do you start doing them shorter to longer, where you knit past the previous turn, resolve it, knit past it a few, then turn, and so on? Or do you knit the entire width first, then each row after shorten the turns to then resolve all turns on the final row? Is there a design difference in the end? Why would you do one technique versus the other? Also, how does the math work when trying to figure out the depth and width of the short row section needed? Thanks. Signed, Haunted by Short Rows. Okay, so as far as placing short rows in a sweater, for anybody who is new to that, the reason we do it is basically to lift up the back neck so that the front neck is lower, which is more comfortable when we wear it. It is also can be used to create a shoulder slope on certain sweater designs, and so we want to build up that fabric because our shoulders don't just go straight out from our neck, they slope down. So a lot of times we want to put in a wedge of fabric here to follow the natural shape. So as far as where you're mostly going to see it is in the back, and that is for that shaping to raise the back neck. And generally where you're going to see it is either above a motif, if it's a round yoke, or below that motif. If there's no motif, it's always usually gonna be right beneath the collar. And that's just because it's the easiest place to put it. It's gonna mess with the shaping the least amount of the increasing or decreasing, depending on which direction you're knitting, of the rest of that yoke. I mean, most of the complicated shaping in a sweater happens in this area. So generally speaking, it can happen anywhere from usually above this arm divide up. This sweater, I'm not sure how easy it's gonna be to turn and show you this. I originally was going to put that shaping up above the motif, and I found that I didn't like the way it looked. I really wanted the top color work here to have an equidistant space all around the front and the back. So it's exactly the same. So I actually put that shaping right down here to push the back up. So it can happen in either spot. Now, as far as how do you decide? Do you do the total length, like the furthest you're going to want to go with those short rows? So what short rows are is creating a wedge of fabric. They can be used for all sorts of purposes, whether it be for just design aesthetic or actual trying to make an added amount of fabric in a certain part of a pattern to help fit a body in a certain way. Maybe it's to make a heel for your sock, shaping for this. It can be a really nice drop hem at the back of a sweater, things like that. So what you do is you knit across your row. So here's your row, but in a short row, instead of knitting all the way, you go to a certain point and then you turn, leaving the rest of these stitches unworked, and knit back. And you keep doing that back and forth to create this extra fabric. So if I did this, all these stitches over here haven't been worked. So you're gonna have this triangle wedge of fabric added to your, whatever you're knitting. So how do you decide to start down here, going all the way to the end and then work within? Or would you start going shorter and then have each row get longer? And it really depends on the shape of the wedge you're trying to create. And the best way to know is to draw it out. I do it all the time when I'm like, wait, okay, how do I need this to look? So if I am doing a top-down sweater, if I want to go, I'm going to draw it and then just show you because I don't think my camera's focusing that well. So if I go shorter and longer, so let's get that to focus. Is it doing it? It's funny because I can't see. I'm like, focus on here. There we go. Okay, so going shorter to longer, it just really wants to get my face. I have to like peek. Going shorter to longer, this is the shape it's going to create, which as you can see, more fits you're going to love my great drawing right here. A round yoke kind of style sweater or whatever kind of sweater. Now, if I did it the other way and I went long to short, do you see now if that was in the back neck of a sweater, how that doesn't really fit the shape of your sweater like this one does? So let's do another example. I said another time you might want to do it is for, say, drop shoulder. And then we want to follow the slope of our shoulders. So if I was knitting, I like to do drop shoulders. I usually do them from the bottom up. So I would want to start going all the way to the end and then knitting shorter as I go up to make the shape I want. If I went long, or if I started short, sorry, do you see how that would create the wrong shape? It would be an inverted triangle to what I want. Sorry, it's really hard to draw and hold this up apparently. Someday I'm just gonna have like this fancy setup with multiple cameras and I'll be like, hold on, let's go to camera 2 and I'll show you my little drawing. Probably not ever gonna happen. But I am proud of myself for actually having a pen and paper though and showing you some drawings. So anyways, I hope that helps. Draw them out and you will be able to see what shape they're going to create and does that work with where you're trying to put them. Now, let's talk a little bit about the math. The end of your question was, how does the math work when trying to figure out the depth and width of the short row section needed? That's where you need to know your finished row gauge and stitch gauge, but especially row gauge, because you need to decide, okay, so for something like this, when I've got my shoulder slope I'm trying to do, so maybe I want that shoulder slope to be 2 inches higher at my neck than at my sleeve opening. So that means I need these short rows to build up over 2 inches worth of rows. So I need to know my row gauge to know how many rows it will create to give me that depth. And you want to think about short rows. I like to think about them, most methods are, you think about it as 2 rows because you work your row part way and then you turn and you go back. And then you work your row part way, turn, go back like that. So if I wanted it to be 2 inches and my row gauge is 10 rows per inch, that means I have 20 rows to hit my depth that I want. And so then I want to look at the amount of stitches that I want to go across and figure out, okay, what increment of stitches do I want to go every single row across 10 rows? Because depending on, we're getting in the weeds here a little bit. Depending on what you're doing, if you're working across the whole back neck, that means you're turning on every single side. But if you're doing something like this shoulder slope, you're going to work each side separately. but you want to think about you only go across, like let's say 6 stitches and then turn. And then maybe you're going to go 6 more and then turn. So maybe you're going to do 6 stitches each time because you have 60 stitches and you're going to do 20 short rows, but only 10 of those is working to the next 6 and then turning. I hope that makes sense. This is where it gets like I could do a class, you know, to be like, let's look at some real numbers and put them into some equations because that's how it's going to make the most sense. But I hope that kind of gives you an idea, is you want to know how many stitches you're working across and what the depth, your final depth, what you would like that to be. And you need your row gauge to know, okay, I need to make it across this many stitches within this many rows. And I'm only eating up more stitches on every other row. Okay, I hope that helps get you started. Hope the rest of you aren't just like, what are you talking about? Okay. I-cord edging mistakes with multiple exclamation points. Why is no one talking about this? Am I crazy? Am I the only one who constantly drops her I-cord stitches and puts them back wrong to then have a mess rows later? So then I try to pull them out and fix on my own. Since a lot of your patterns have I-cord edging, do you have any videos? Is this a problem others have run into? So fixing an I-cord is tricky business. I do not have a video for it. Because I dislike having to fix I-cords so much, I'm very, very careful with my I-cord edges. But my amazing and lovely tech editor that y'all got to meet a few episodes ago back in December, she has actually been really paying attention to some of the questions we get or little things people do find tricky. And you know what one of them is? I-cord edges and how to fix them. And so she is amazing and she made a video. So I'm going to link that below for you so that you can go check out her video on how to fix them. And you're not alone. It is really tricky. The reason they're challenging is just because those stitches are turning in on themselves. So if you don't put them back on the right way, all of a sudden it looks like you've got like purl bumps going on. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. I will say, I don't know when yours are popping off or if it's just when you made a mistake. So maybe you have to take your needle out and drop down. But definitely check out Megan's video, and otherwise lifelines, we'll keep them in the order you need them in if you do have to tear back. So put a lifeline in every once in a while. And then it's not a bad idea if it's something that's like, you'll pull your project out of your project bag and you're like, oh my gosh, my edge popped off. Needle stoppers can kind of be a lifesaver for that too. So, but there is a video linked below and I hope you find it helpful. All right, next question. Hi there, I'm currently knitting the Gib 2 for my boyfriend and I love it so much I've decided to plan one for myself. I was wondering, since my bust is 40 inches, I have wider shoulders and a long torso. Should I knit Gib 1 or 2 for myself? What are the big differences between the two patterns? I tried looking for the answer to this in past videos, but couldn't help it. Couldn't find it. Any insight would be much helpful. I saw the helpful at the end and just mixed up my words there. So one of the things I would do is try on your boyfriend's sweater, even if he is a totally different size than you. You might be able to see how those dimensions feel on your body and then knit the size that's appropriate for you. I do basically though, to just like totally simplify, the difference between Gib 1 and Gib 2 is mainly in the shoulders and the torso length. So for the men's versions that I design of my sweaters, I do generally a broader shoulder, deeper yoke to have room, roomier sleeves, and a longer torso. That's it. I don't do waist shaping in either pattern, so they're similar in that way. But if you do feel like you have broad shoulders, and if you've ever had trouble in the past with sizing in women's patterns where you feel like they just don't really fit the shoulders quite right, or if they do, maybe they don't fit elsewhere as well as you would like them to, then you could definitely give Gib 2 a go. A lot of my testers were women that knit that and wore that and loved it. So both of them completely can be worn by men and women. There's just standards, sizing standards that are helpful for like, here's a really average way to try and design for broader shoulders or a longer torso, things like that. And you already have the Gib 2 pattern, so that might be a great option. All right, next question. I just knit the DRK Everyday Sweater. Loved the pattern. I knit a size 2, which fit in the chest and everywhere else except for the upper arms. I have large arms and I'm wondering what I can do to fix it besides starting over and knitting a bigger size. I would be willing to do this, but I do like how the body fits. Thanks for your help. So I think you can totally, I also just love that she ended with this. I've never enjoyed socks until the everyday socks, and now I have a pair on the needles always. Yay! I was not a sock knitter until a few years ago, and I feel like once you find a good sock pattern, then it's just like, they're so great to always have on the needles. So that made me very happy. Thanks for tucking that little note in there. Okay, I definitely don't think you have to completely start over. I would go ahead and pull back the sleeves, and I would do a couple things. One, I would be curious to know if you went up a needle size when you knit your sleeves. So we are all pretty much will knit tighter in small circumference sleeves versus large circumference body. So if you did not change needle size, go up a needle size, because that might be the fix you need, and then you might be good. If that is not going to be enough, then you could even go up one more needle size, as long as you still like the fabric and it's still looking cohesive with the rest of the sweater. You can also add on a few more stitches. So once you have taken them out, keep the stitches you had on hold from when you knit the sweater on your needle, but even undo the picked up stitches from the underarm. And when you pick them up the next time, pick up extra stitches, like an extra inch's worth. That combined with going up a needle size might be the perfect fix to have the sleeves be more comfortable without having to re-knit the whole sweater. So I hope that one of those helps you get the sleeves you would like, because you definitely want your sleeves to be comfortable. That sweater does have more of a slim fit sleeve, but definitely you want sleeves that feel good. So I hope that helps. All right, we're already to the last question. Creases. When I wet block a garment, I lay it flat to dry. I end up with creases along the sleeves and the sides of the body. It doesn't bother me much on the body, but the sleeve creases can drive me nuts. They eventually lessen with wear, but it'd be great if there's a trick to creaseless blocking. I guess I could blow up long balloons and put them in each sleeve, but is there a better way? I mean, that's pretty clever. Thanks for any help you can offer. So, I mean, you can see mine. I don't fight it. I definitely take care to not like pat my sleeves down. I think if you can just kind of gently lay them flat to dry, then they won't have as strong of a crease. But I have seen all kinds of tips throughout the years online. People use pool noodles, like they cut down a pool noodle and put that in there. You could do newspaper. You could do leftover paper towel roll insert, just anything so that it's not lying sandwiched on itself. So it doesn't even need to be the size of the sleeve. It's just something to help lift that area up to get rid of that fold. But I bet some of y'all have some even better tips. So if you do, put them in the comments below. But yeah, because I wear my sweater so much, I really try to keep things easy peasy when it comes to caring for them. Otherwise, all of a sudden I will have a massive stockpile of knits that need to be washed, and I'll procrastinate against it if they're finicky. So I don't really worry about it too much, because I don't notice it so much when I'm wearing it. Like I can look for it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's quite the crease. But if it bothers you, I would definitely try one of those things, and maybe we'll get some even better tips in the comments section. So yeah. All right, I think that's everything. We've got the March to May Knit Along going strong. If you haven't joined, I hope you will. And I think I'm just gonna end this here. I hope y'all have a great weekend. I hope you get to make it make it, spend it making something, whether it be knitting, spinning, weaving, sewing, cooking, baking, or just some memories. I hope it's a good one, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. If you've got a question you would like me to answer, make sure to fill out the form at the bottom of the description box below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.